I stopped dead in the middle of the vineyard's stone corridor, my cousin Jessica's voice slicing through the festive air like a shard of glass. $20,000 for a wedding gift? Chloe, you are just the most incredible sister. The beautifully wrapped gift card inside my purse suddenly feels like it weighs 50 pounds, a dead weight against my hip. $4,000. That was the real number. It represented 2 full months of meticulous, soul-crushing saving. It was the sum of every desk lunch I'd eaten while my colleagues went out, every weekend trip I'd canceled, every single extra dollar funneled into a separate account. My fingers instinctively clench around the strap of my designer handbag, a purchase from a time before my finances became a public utility. Jessica turns, her glass of sparkling rosé tilting at a dangerous angle as her eyes finally land on me. They go wide, her lips forming a perfect, surprised "Oh, Chloe." Was that supposed to be a secret? Before the tidal wave of my actual emotions can crash over my face, years of professional PR training take over. My body moves on autopilot. I stretch my lips into a shape that I pray resembles a smile, though my face feels like a wooden mask, completely disconnected from the hurricane of betrayal and rage whipping up inside me. "Don't even worry about it," I managed to say, my voice sounding surprisingly steady, a testament to my career. These things always have a way of getting out. Jessica beams, visibly relieved, and gives my arm a conspiratorial squeeze. Still, what an unbelievably generous gift. Olivia is so lucky to have you. The entire world seems to narrow around me, the edges blurring into a muted gray. I just nod, murmuring something vaguely appropriate, and continue my walk down the corridor on legs that have suddenly turned to lead. $20,000, not 20,000. The heavy oak door to the ladies' room feels like a bank vault door as I push my way through, seeking refuge in the farthest stall and clicking the lock shut. Only then do my hands begin to shake, violently, now that there's no audience to perform for. I fumble for my phone, my fingers slick with a cold sweat as I pull up my banking app. The balance on the screen is a cruel joke, the pathetic result of months of working 60-hour weeks, of a persistent low-grade sadness that came from constant sacrifice. The gift card receipt is still in my email inbox, the confirmation number and the real amount displayed in stark, bold letters. $4,000. And then a memory surfaces, sharp and painful. My mother's voice, casual but with a cutting edge, during Sunday brunch just last week. "You know, Chloe, with your impressive PR salary, everyone has certain expectations. They'll be looking for something substantial." The way she had lingered on the word substantial, her gaze flicking over my sensible outfit, had felt like a small slap. Olivia, my perfect doll-like younger sister, had nodded in perfect agreement. Totally. Jenny's sister gave her $25,000 for her wedding. It must be so nice to have a sister that generous. Then came the look. The quick, dismissive glance they exchanged when I'd nervously mentioned my planned $4,000 gift. The gift that represented all my overtime, all my declined invitations, every penny I'd managed to scrape together. My heartbeat pounds in my ears like a drum solo. Sweat breaks out across my forehead as my vision begins to tunnel. I press my palms flat against the cool painted metal of the stall door, forcing myself to take deep, ragged breaths. 1, 2, 3. In the grand, gold-framed mirror above the row of marble sinks, my own reflection stares back at me. Chloe Vance, 32, a rising star in the PR world, the reliable daughter, the generous sister. My makeup is a flawless mask. My deep burgundy dress is impeccably wrinkle-free. My smile when I practice it is pleasant and professionally warm. but I see something new burning in my eyes now. A cold, controlled fury, simmering just beneath the meticulously composed surface. I reach back into my purse and pull the gift card from its elaborate silver-bowed wrapping. The ribbon I'd spent 20 minutes perfecting just this morning is now crushed between my fingers. $20,000. They hadn't just exaggerated, they had created a fiction, a public narrative they expected me to finance. And this wasn't the first time. A cascade of memories, a highlight reel of my own exploitation, flashes through my mind. The check I wrote for Olivia's final semester of college, when she impulsively decided to study art history in Florence. The loan for my parents' emergency roof repairs that was conveniently never spoken of again. The stack of medical bills from my dad's minor surgery last year that somehow, inexplicably, became my sole responsibility. Each and every time, the pattern was identical. The casual, offhand mention of a pressing need, the pointed, not-so-subtle references to my good fortune and my successful career. The unspoken but heavily implied obligation, and the gratitude, when it came at all, never quite seemed to match the scale of the sacrifice. I move to the sink, and cold water splashes onto my wrists as I wash my hands with a mechanical, robotic precision. I pat my face dry with a linen towel, reapply my lipstick with a hand that is now perfectly steady, and straighten my shoulders, pulling them back. Not this time. I walk back into the rehearsal dinner with measured, deliberate steps, my eyes scanning the room until I find them. My mother, Catherine, and my sister, Olivia, their heads bent together in hushed conversation at the head table. They both go silent the instant they notice me approaching, their smiles switching on like stage lights, too bright, too eager. A flicker of guilt, quick as a firefly, flashes across Olivia's face before she masterfully masks it with a laugh at something our father, Richard, says beside her. Miss Vance? The wedding planner, a harried woman with a clipboard and a permanently fixed professional smile, materializes at my elbow. Your mother mentioned you'd like to announce your gift during tomorrow's reception? I turn to face her slowly, a new plan forming in my mind with a chilling, perfect clarity. Actually, I say, and my voice sounds different even to my own ears, calm, cool, and utterly decisive. I have a better idea. Could you possibly add me to the toast list? I'd like to go on before my mother speaks. The planner doesn't blink. She just nods, making a neat note on her clipboard. Of course, right after the father-daughter dance. Perfect, I say, a real smile finally touching my lips as I feel the reassuring weight of the $4,000 gift card in my purse. I think everyone will be quite surprised by what I have to say. The hotel room keycard slipped from my trembling fingers twice before I managed to open the door. Inside, I kicked off my painful heels, one of them bouncing silently off the thick beige carpet as I collapsed onto the edge of the king-sized bed. The silence of the room was a relief. My phone buzzed on the nightstand with a text from my mother. Don't forget your big speech tomorrow. Everyone is so excited about your generous gift. 3. I switched the phone off completely and pulled out my laptop instead. The screen glowed in the dim hotel lighting, illuminating a spreadsheet I had secretly maintained for years. Each entry was a precise, painful record of my silent generosity, a digital paper trail of their relentless manipulation. My finger traced down the screen, each row a ghost of a sacrifice. $8,500, Dad's knee surgery and physical therapy copays. $14,200, Mom and Dad's new roof after the big storm. $12,000, Olivia's final semester in Florence. including her apartment and living expenses. $3,340, the emergency loan when Olivia's vintage Fiat broke down. $5,450. My parents' 30th anniversary cruise. $8,660. Helping out with Dad's property taxes. The total at the bottom of the screen seemed to mock me, glowing ominously. $52,150 over the last 3 years. That was nearly a full year's salary for me after taxes. I opened my banking app again, staring at the balance that should have been so much larger. It should have been enough for the down payment on the small townhouse I'd had my eye on for months. The one with the little garden and the bay window perfect for a reading nook. The one the realtor kept calling me about. My email inbox held yet more evidence. Subject lines from Olivia scrolled past like accusations. "Thank you so much for the tuition help. I'll pay you back someday, I promise. Love you. You are literally a lifesaver with the car thing. I owe you big time. Best sister ever. Florence would have been impossible without you." Not a single penny had ever been repaid. I clicked over to my voicemail, finding the message from last Tuesday that I'd saved, a knot of dread forming in my stomach. "Sweetie, it's Mom. Just confirming you're bringing the gift tomorrow. We're telling everyone about your generous contribution. 20,000 is such a meaningful number, you know. Anyway, call me back. $20,000. The precise amount they knew I couldn't possibly afford without completely emptying my savings account, wiping out my future to fund their fantasy. The hotel phone on the nightstand let out a shrill ring, startling me so badly I nearly dropped my laptop. I answered it reflexively. "Hello, you're not answering your cell." It was Sarah, my best friend. Her voice was clear and fierce. "What happened at the rehearsal? You went quiet. They told everyone I'm giving Olivia a $20,000 gift. They..." "What?" Sarah's voice rose in disbelief. "Chloe, that's 5 times what you planned." A hollow, brittle laugh escaped my lips. "According to my spreadsheet, it's not even their biggest ask." "What spreadsheet?" The words just tumbled out of me then, a torrent of confession as I described the secret financial accounting I'd kept for years. Every so-called loan, every request for temporary help, every guilt-induced bank transfer. $52,000, Sarah whispered when I was done. "Chloe, that's financial abuse." The term hung in the air between us, stark and horrifying. I'd never dared to label it before, but hearing her say it felt like a key turning in a lock. "This ends now," Sarah said, her voice hardening with protective anger. "They have been using you as their personal ATM for far too long." "It's not that simple, Sarah." "Because you've let them make it complicated," she shot back. "Your mother orchestrates the whole thing, Olivia plays the part of the helpless ingenue, and your father just sits back and benefits without ever lifting a finger to defend you." Her words landed with the force of a physical blow, naming the trio of betrayers so plainly. "If I don't give them the money they've promised everyone, I'll be the villain of the story," I said, the old fear creeping back in. "Only to the people who don't matter," Sarah countered immediately. "This is your chance, Chloe. This is your moment to break the pattern. For good." After we hung up, I sat motionless in the dark room, Sarah's words echoing in the silence. My phone buzzed again. A late-night call from my mother. "Chloe, darling, just checking in. Your father and I were just telling the photographer to be sure to capture your special moment tomorrow. Everyone is just so excited about your generosity." "Mom, I never agreed to $20,000, I said, my voice quiet but firm. There was a beat of cold silence on the other end. "Well, that's what we've told everyone," she said, her voice sharpening. It would be terribly embarrassing for the family to go back on it now. You know how these things are, Chloe. Perception is reality, the core mantra of my own profession, twisted and used against me like a weapon. I have to go, Mom. It's late. I hung up before she could respond, my heart hammering. My eyes fell on the blinking social media notifications on my phone. 3 new tags. My cousin Jessica's post was the first one I saw. A picture of her and Olivia, captioned, "So proud of my amazing cousin Chloe Vance for her incredible $20,000 wedding gift to my other favorite cousin. Family goals, best sister ever." 23 likes already. My stomach twisted into a tight, painful knot. The trap was now complete, public, and digital. If I backed out now, I wouldn't just be ungenerous, I'd be a liar. The narrative was already written, and I was cast as the villain either way. I pulled a sheet of the hotel's thick, cream-colored stationery from the desk drawer and began to write. I crossed things out. I redrafted. The words had to be perfect. Not angry, not bitter, just honest. I found the DJ's number on the wedding itinerary and called him directly, confirming my new place in the toast lineup. Next, I retrieved the thick, leather-bound photo album from my suitcase. I had spent weeks curating it, gathering pictures from our entire childhood. Olivia and me building sandcastles at the shore, making snow angels in the backyard of our first house, hiking with Dad in a national park. Real memories, not monetary transactions. Inside the front cover, I carefully wrote an inscription. Money disappears and furniture breaks. But these memories, Olivia, are our true inheritance. I ran my finger over the fresh ink, then closed the album with a decisive snap. For the first time in years, a strange and unfamiliar feeling settled over me. It wasn't the usual anxiety about disappointing them. It wasn't the simmering resentment over their manipulation. It was something cleaner, sharper. It was clarity. I placed the photo album on the nightstand beside the bed and turned off the light. Tomorrow, I was going to give a gift worth far more than $20,000. I was going to give them the truth. The next morning, I balanced a mimosa in one hand and forced a strained smile as my Aunt Diana leaned in close, enveloping me in a cloud of her overpowering perfume. "Such a generous sister," she whispered, patting my arm with a knowing look. $20,000. When my daughter got married, her brother gave her a blender. The mimosa suddenly tasted sour in my mouth. I had endured a whole morning of this, a parade of relatives approaching me with these knowing, conspiratorial smiles, congratulating me on a gift I had never promised. Each comment landed like a stone in my stomach, building a wall of resentment that I could barely contain behind my practiced PR smile. Across the lavishly decorated breakfast room, my mother caught my eye and raised her own glass in a silent, approving toast. Beside her, Olivia laughed at something her maid of honor said, and they both stole quick glances in my direction, whispering. The maid of honor cornered me by the breakfast buffet just a few minutes later. "I heard about your amazing gift," she gushed, loading her plate high with cantaloupe. "You're setting such a high bar for the rest of us." I could barely afford the bachelorette weekend in Miami. I just nodded, reaching for a strawberry to give my hands something to do. "Family is important," I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth, rehearsed, hollow. How many times had I repeated that exact phrase to myself while writing checks I couldn't afford? How many of my own vacations had been canceled? How many of my own promotions celebrated alone in my apartment because the money had been diverted to someone else's needs? At the hair salon, my mother held court among the bridesmaids, her voice carrying easily across the noisy room. My Chloe always comes through for this family. Always. The stylist twisted my hair into an elaborate updo, pulling it so tight it made my eyes water. Or maybe it was just the crushing weight of their expectations pressing down on me from all sides. Just as the stylist was finishing, the wedding planner appeared at my elbow like a ghost, slipping a folded piece of paper into my hand. "From your mother," she whispered, before disappearing back into the controlled chaos of the pre-wedding preparations. With fingers that trembled slightly, I unfolded the note. The handwriting was my mother's elegant, sharp script. "Your announcement right after the father-daughter dance, perfect timing for maximum impact." My lungs felt like they were being squeezed in a vice. She had choreographed this entire performance, and my role was simply to open my wallet on cue. I crumpled the note in my fist, feeling something inside me finally crack. It wasn't my resolve, it was my silence. Back in the bridal suite, I reached for the photo album I'd brought for Olivia. As I flipped through the childhood pictures last night, I'd found an unexpected gift for myself. The memory of who I used to be before they had trained me to be compliant. There was 10-year-old me, skinny arms crossed defiantly, standing between Olivia and a neighborhood boy who had made her cry. My chin was jutted forward, my eyes flashing with righteous indignation. I'd forgotten that girl even existed, the one who spoke her mind, before she learned to swallow her words along with her pride. Another photo slipped out from between the pages. It was our Grandma Vance, holding both of us on her lap, her silver hair catching the sunlight through a window. Her voice echoed in my memory, as clear as if she were in the room. "Honesty is the only gift that never breaks, Chloe girl. You remember that?" I touched the faded image, feeling the simple truth of her words burn through my fingertips. My silence hadn't protected anyone. It had only enabled years of taking, of expectations that grew more audacious with each unspoken surrender. The bathroom door swung open, and my mother appeared in the mirror's reflection behind me. Our eyes met. Her perfectly lined lips tightened at the corners when she saw my expression. "There you are. Everyone is waiting for you." She stepped into the room and closed the door, blocking the only exit. "I have told everyone about the 20,000, Chloe. Don't you dare embarrass us." The words hung in the air between us, the lie finally stated directly to my face. I turned around slowly, clutching the photo album to my chest like a shield. "I never agreed to that amount, Mom." Her shoulders stiffened. A flicker of genuine surprise crossed her face before it hardened into something much colder. "Don't be difficult. You make more than enough to spare it. Family comes first." "Yes," I said, the single word coming out stronger than I expected. "Family does come first. That's why I'm doing this." "Doing what?" Suspicion narrowed her eyes, her gaze flicking to the album in my hands. I moved past her, toward the door she was no longer blocking, being honest. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Whatever happens, I'm proud of you. The truth is always the right answer." The photographer caught me in the hallway, his camera clicking away at my expression. Whatever he saw in my face made him lower the lens for a moment and give me a small nod, something like respect in his eyes. "That's a keeper," he murmured to himself. My Uncle Ben passed me on the way to the ceremony grounds, his weathered hand squeezing my shoulder gently. "Stand tall, Chloe," he said quietly, his voice a low rumble. "Some storms just need to break." He had always been the one who saw through the family dynamics, who recognized the toxic undercurrents while everyone else just admired the calm surface. His silent support steadied me as I approached the DJ's table and handed him my revised speaking card. "Before the mother of the bride," I said firmly, "it's a surprise." The DJ, a young guy with kind eyes, studied my face for a second, then nodded. Got it. The ceremony passed in a blur of white lace and whispered promises. I stood beside my sister, holding her bouquet of white peonies, wondering if she saw the irony. I had been holding things for her our entire lives. The reception began with flowing champagne and forced laughter. Across the room, my mother straightened my father's tie, whispering in his ear. She was radiant in her mother-of-the-bride glory, accepting compliments and directing servers with a practiced, regal efficiency. Every few minutes, her eyes would find me in the crowd, a silent reminder, making sure I was still in place for my assigned role in her play. The father-daughter dance concluded to a round of warm applause. My mother immediately began moving toward the microphone, her path clear in her mind. But the DJ's voice cut through the settling quiet. And now, before we hear from the mother of the bride, the maid of honor, Chloe Vance, would like to say a few words. My mother froze mid-step, her champagne glass tilting. Her head swiveled toward me, her eyes wide with shock and alarm. I rose from my seat, my legs steady beneath me. The room fell silent as I walked toward the microphone, feeling the collective weight of expectation and confusion ripple through the crowd. My heartbeat was a frantic drum in my ears, but my hands remained perfectly still, no longer trembling. For the first time in years, I recognized myself. Not the agreeable daughter, not the reliable ATM, but the girl in that old photograph, the one who knew how to stand her ground. I took the microphone, met my mother's stunned, furious gaze from across the room, and smiled. It wasn't the practiced, pleasant PR smile. It was something real and unflinching. Behind my mother, my father shifted uncomfortably in his seat, suddenly looking away. Olivia's fingers twisted in her lap, her new wedding ring catching the light. But I kept speaking, the words flowing now, as unstoppable as the truth always is once it finally finds its voice. The wedding reception was buzzing with energy, the sound of clinking crystal glasses and silverware tapping against fine china plates. The low murmur of 100 conversations hung in the air like an expensive perfume. The groom, David, had his arm wrapped securely around Olivia's waist, and both of them were watching me with expectant smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. "I've thought a lot about what to give my sister for her wedding," I began, my voice carrying across the grand ballroom with a steadiness that surprised even me. My mother leaned forward in her chair, her expression a mask of encouragement, though I knew she was already rehearsing her follow-up announcement in her mind. I could practically see the words forming behind her eyes. "And that gift is $20,000 from my incredibly generous daughter, Chloe." My gaze locked with hers, and I held it for a beat longer than was comfortable. A flicker of uncertainty, of doubt, crossed her face. "Money," I continued, my thumb running along the cool metal of the microphone, "can be spent. Furniture can break." The photo album rested against my hip, hidden from view by the white linen tablecloth. But love and truth, those last forever. My mother rose halfway from her seat, her champagne glass now abandoned on the table. The DJ, bless his soul, after our earlier conversation, subtly stepped to the side, creating a small but effective barrier between her and the microphone stand. Olivia's smile faltered. She glanced from me to our mother, then back again, her fingers tightening on David's arm. My father, Richard, suddenly became fascinated by the intricate pattern on the tablecloth, refusing to meet my eyes. He never did, not when it mattered. "So instead of a number," I said, my voice gaining strength with each word, "I want to give my sister a blessing." Olivia, build your marriage on a foundation of honesty, not on forced sacrifice. A distinct ripple moved through the crowd. I saw raised eyebrows, quick exchanged glances, and small, almost imperceptible nods of recognition. My Aunt Judith, who had watched my mother manipulate me into paying for Olivia's Florence program 3 years ago, leaned toward Uncle Ben with a whispered comment. Uncle Ben's eyes met mine from across the room, and he gave a slow, deliberate nod of quiet approval. The truth had been hiding in plain sight for years, visible to anyone who was willing to look. Family isn't measured in dollars, I continued, even as my mother attempted to edge her way around the DJ. Her smile stretched so tight, it looked like it might crack the foundation on her face. A smattering of applause started, and it quickly grew, drowning out her hissed protests as she tried to interrupt. It's measured in moments of authentic connection. I reached beneath the table and lifted the album, its rich burgundy leather cover catching the light from the crystal chandeliers overhead. This album contains our shared history. This is the real wealth of our family. Walking toward Olivia felt strangely liberating. The immense pressure that had lived between my shoulder blades for years, the constant, heavy responsibility of being the family's financial backstop, seemed to dissolve with each step I took. I opened the album to the very first page. There was Olivia, age 7, and me, age 10, our arms wrapped around each other at the lake house. This was before college tuition and roof repairs and emergency medical bills, before all the calculations and manipulations, before love started coming with a price tag. "Remember this?" I asked, my voice soft now, meant only for her. "You were so afraid of the water, and I spent the whole afternoon teaching you how to float on your back." A single tear slipped down Olivia's cheek, smudging her carefully applied mascara. A complex mixture of shame and recognition flickered across her face as she accepted the heavy album with trembling hands. "I hope you and David fill the rest of its pages with honest moments and true happiness," I said, squeezing her fingers before I stepped back. "That's worth more than any dollar amount you can name." The photographer's flash went off, capturing the moment forever. Olivia's tear-streaked face, the album clutched against her sequined bodice, my own straight-backed posture as I returned to my seat. It was not the money shot my mother had planned, but it was an honest one. Applause swelled around us, much louder and more sustained than I had expected. My Uncle Ben was the first one to stand up, followed by Sarah at the back table, then Aunt Judith, and soon nearly half the room was on their feet. They weren't just standing for me, I realized. They were standing for the audacity of truth in a room built on polite fictions. My mother remained seated, her body rigid with a fury that was barely contained behind her frozen social smile. My father patted her hand absently, his gaze still fixed somewhere over my left shoulder, a master of avoidance. Later, as the evening wore on, guests approached me not with congratulations, but with a quiet, genuine appreciation. Mrs. Robertson, my mother's bridge partner for 20 years, squeezed my elbow. "About time someone in this family spoke honestly," she murmured, just loud enough for my mother, standing 3 feet away, to hear. I found Olivia by the towering wedding cake. The album was tucked under her arm. Her makeup had been hastily repaired, but her eyes were still red-rimmed. "You made me look terrible," she whispered, but there was no real heat behind the words. "No," I corrected her gently. "I gave you the chance to be better." Olivia glanced toward our mother, who was now surrounded by a tight circle of relatives, her hands moving in short, sharp gestures. Damage control was in full swing. My mother, Catherine, intercepted me as I tried to slip away from the now crowded dance floor. her fingers curled around my wrist, her manicured nails digging into my skin. "You have humiliated us," she hissed, her public smile fixed in place for any watching guests, while her eyes flashed with a cold, unadulterated fury. That speech, that photo album. What on earth were you thinking? I drew a long, steady breath, feeling oddly calm in the eye of the storm she was creating. The weight I had carried for so long had vanished, leaving a strange clarity in its place. "I was thinking about honesty, Mom." My father, Richard, appeared behind her, his jaw clenched beneath his own rehearsed smile. "Your sister deserved better than that, Chloe, on her special day, of all times." Before I could respond, Olivia herself approached, her wedding gown swishing softly against the polished floor. Her mascara was streaked again. "Why did you have to make such a scene?" she asked, her voice wavering between genuine hurt and a performance she'd been taught her whole life. Everyone was expecting, $20,000, I asked quietly, refusing to be baited into raising my voice. A gift that I never once promised to give? My mother's nostrils flared. "We simply assumed you'd want to do something meaningful for your sister. With your salary." "My salary barely covers my own rent after I've given you all over $52,000 in the past 3 years, I said. The number fell between us like a granite stone, precise, undeniable. Richard blinked rapidly. "Now wait just a minute." I reached into my small clutch and withdrew a folded piece of paper. The spreadsheet I had printed that morning, every single transaction meticulously documented. "Here," I said, holding it out. "Here's a complete accounting. Dad's medical copays, your roof repairs, Olivia's semester in Florence. That's private family business." Catherine snapped, her eyes darting nervously toward a few nearby guests who had begun to notice our tense gathering. "It was private until you decided to announce a fictional $20,000 gift to everyone we know," I said, my voice remaining level even as a hot anger rose in my chest. Love shouldn't come with a price tag. Uncle Ben approached then, a champagne glass in his hand. His weathered face hardened as he overheard my mother's rising protests. "Catherine, the girl's right," he said, placing a steadying hand on my shoulder. "This has gone on far too long." Mrs. Caldwell, my mother's bridge partner, paused nearby, her expression shifting from mild curiosity to clear discomfort as she witnessed my mother's mask begin to slip. "You don't understand," Catherine sputtered, her composure finally fracturing. "Family helps family." "I agree," I said, opening my purse again, "which is why I brought these." I pulled out my phone and opened the text thread with Olivia from 2 weeks ago. I held it up so she could see the screen. Her own words glowed back at her. "Mom says you're announcing the $20,000 at the reception. So generous. Can't wait." Followed by a string of heart emojis. Olivia's face drained of all color. I just thought." The wedding planner hovered nearby, clipboard clutched to her chest. My mother tried to wave her away, but the planner stepped forward instead. "Mrs. Vance specifically asked me to prepare for that announcement," she said, addressing me directly. She gave me the exact figure and requested it be highlighted during the parent toasts. "I was just trying to make your sister's day special." Catherine's voice rose, shrill and desperate, drawing even more attention. "At my expense," I finished for her. Again. The words tasted different now. Not bitter, just true. Necessary. Olivia stared at the phone, then at the photo album she held. She opened it slowly, her fingers tracing over a picture of me, age 10, standing protectively beside a 7-year-old her on the first day of school. Another of a teenage me helping her with a science fair project while our parents beamed for the camera, taking all the credit. Her eyes lifted to meet our mother's, and I saw something new dawning in them. Understanding, maybe, or a dawning recognition of a pattern she'd benefited from her entire life without ever questioning it. Mom? The single word carried an immense weight. It was a question loaded with decades of unexamined family dynamics. Catherine's carefully constructed facade crumbled completely. Her shoulders went rigid, and she grabbed her evening bag from a nearby chair. "I will not stand here and be accused by my own daughter," she announced to anyone within earshot. "Not on this day of all days." She stormed toward the grand exit, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Richard, my father, followed a few paces behind without ever meeting my eyes, his perpetual retreat from conflict as familiar and predictable as his cologne. I stood alone in the aftermath, my spine straight, my breath even. Conversations resumed around me in hushed, excited tones. The DJ, ever the professional, announced the next dance. Life, it seemed, just continued. Uncle Ben squeezed my shoulder once more before moving away. "About time," he murmured. Olivia remained, clutching the album to her chest, looking smaller and younger now without our parents flanking her. "I didn't know," she whispered. "Not about all of it." "You didn't want to know," I corrected her, but gently. "There's a difference." She nodded slowly, a flicker of something authentic, something real, finally crossing her face. "What happens now?" I looked around at the beautiful, expensive reception, the flowers that cost more than my monthly rent, the open bar and the lavish buffet, the life we had all been pretending we could afford. "Now," I said, feeling the first genuine smile of the day spread across my face, "we start telling the truth, and we see what's left." I ran my fingers over the glossy, smooth leather of the album cover, savoring the profound quiet of my own apartment. It had been 1 month since Olivia's wedding, and the immense weight I had carried on my shoulders for years had simply lifted. There were no more frantic texts asking for small, urgent loans, no more guilt-inducing voicemails about vague family obligations. The morning light streamed through my living room windows, catching on the edge of an unopened letter that had arrived the day before. Olivia's handwriting was on the envelope. I had been circling it for a day like a cautious animal, unsure if it contained yet another manipulation or the beginnings of something new. Taking a deep breath, I slid my thumb under the seal. "Dear Chloe," it began. The photo album is on our coffee table. David picks it up almost every day. He keeps asking about the little girls with the gap-toothed smiles building sandcastles. I think I've shown him every picture a dozen times now. What I haven't told him, what I need to tell you, is that Mom pressured me into the money announcement. She said it would motivate you to give more. I should have stood up to her then. I'm so sorry that I didn't. Your speech wasn't what I expected, but maybe it was what I needed to hear. Love, Olivia. My hands trembled slightly as I folded the letter. It was the first truly honest communication we had shared in years. I pulled out my own copy of the family album, the twin to Olivia's gift, and flipped to a blank page at the back. Carefully, I positioned a new photograph, a candid shot of Olivia hugging me after my wedding speech, her face a mixture of relief and genuine gratitude, not the practiced smile our mother had taught us. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Next to it, I left several empty spaces, room for honest relationships still forming. "So how's therapy going?" Sarah asked later that night, raising her wine glass to me across our favorite dinner table. Around us, the friends who had stood by me through the wedding drama clinked their own glasses and laughed. "Dr. Marshall says I've developed excellent boundaries," I replied, unable to keep the note of pride from my voice. "Last week, Dad called about their property taxes being due. Instead of reaching for my credit card, I suggested he look into a payment plan with the county. Sarah's eyebrows shot up. And? He actually thanked me for the advice instead of making me feel selfish, I said, shaking my head, still a little surprised myself. Baby steps. To speaking the truth, even when it's hard, Sarah declared, raising her glass higher. To speaking the truth, our friends echoed around the table. My phone buzzed. It was my mother's number. Once that would have sent a jolt of anxiety and obligation through me. Now I just silenced the call, planning to return it tomorrow on my own terms. A few days later, when a coworker, Jen, mentioned her parents' expectations about her helping with her younger brother's college tuition, I found myself sharing my own experience without preaching or judgment. The look of profound relief in her eyes when I validated her feelings of discomfort was a powerful reminder of my own journey. Later that week, my phone rang during my lunch break. Chloe, it was my mother. Her voice sounded different, less commanding, almost hesitant. I've been thinking about what happened at the wedding. I waited, my fork suspended over my salad. I never saw how much pressure we were putting on you, she continued, the words clearly difficult for her to say. The money, the expectations. I think I just convinced myself it was normal. Thank you for saying that, Mom, I responded, my own words carefully measured. I'm open to building something new, but it has to be based on respect. There was a long pause. I'd like that, she said quietly. That evening, I added another photograph to my album. It was from a recent family dinner where, for the first time I could remember, no one mentioned my finances or hinted at any obligations. There was just conversation. It was sometimes awkward, often stilted, but it was honest. On the very first page of the album, I wrote a new inscription beneath the one I had written for Olivia. The true wealth of a family is measured in honesty, not dollars. I closed the album, leaving the final pages blank, ready for a new chapter of our family's history, one that had not yet been written. Because sometimes, the most valuable and transformative gift you can ever give is the courage to speak your own truth.